welcome everybody to Illuminate, Navigate, and Radiate. I'm your host, Brandon, and this is another entry into our journey segment. We have Kasie Stanley from New Jersey today. How you doing, Kasie?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. It's good seeing you again. Me and Casey were at college in West Virginia together for about either half a year or a full year. Met each other down there, and then we both went our separate ways. So it's been cool to reconnect and find out that there's something we all struggle with. Reconnecting and hearing some of your story. I thought that's a really good one that a lot of people can relate to. And, you know, can be nerve-wracking and scary to share sometimes, but when people share their story, it's so powerful and it can bring so much good to it. So I'm excited to see you. I'm so happy and thankful that you were willing to come on and share your story as well. Um, so yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. And if you just want to, talk about kind of what your life was like growing up a little bit and kind of what that looked like as you started growing in life.
First, I'll say thanks for having me. And then second off, it is good to see you again. So starting off, born and raised in PA. I have some siblings and stuff, but I grew up in a household with, a mom and a dad. Kind of had a rough upbringing. We kind of went through emotional, a little bit of physical abuse, I would say. Um, but didn't really think much of it as a kid. I mean, your parents are kind of who you look up to, who you listen to. I eventually joined the military, found my husband, got married, and then we had our first kid. And then that's when I kind of hit some postpartum after having him, and then it was kind of like I had childhood trauma come back. It kind of hit me all at once, and I realized, how I was raised wasn't the greatest. Just not a lot of affection, not a lot of love, not a lot of, I love you. Kind of
Was
a
that something you were aware of as you were younger and growing up, like that maybe some of that stuff was lacking, or since it wasn't in your life, you just didn't even think about it?
Honestly, I didn't think about it until I had my son. It was just like, and he's only 5 now, but he's always telling me he loves me. He's always hugging me, and I'm like, dang, like where was that when I was growing up? Like that would have been great, and it was just, I mean, yeah, it was there here and there, but it wasn't like the love that I have with my son or he has with me. And so I really missed out on that and stuff. And so it definitely made it hard. And then it just made me look at the past and kind of how we were treated, and even seeing how, um, things went with like my nieces and nephews. It was just, I didn't want my kids, to live in a household or be around people that could hurt them or just, be even emotionally abusive. So it was my goal to try to break the cycle. And so I currently don't talk to my parents, and I talk to my siblings. I don't talk to my brother, but I do talk to my sisters and stuff. And so I mean, it's hard. It's hard to have people say, but they're your parents. And it's like, it's always what they're your parents, but it's like, look at what I went through growing up as a kid. It was always walking on eggshells when my dad came home. It was just, even if we didn't do anything wrong, we were getting in trouble. So there was a lot of, definitely, the kind of bipolar, narcissist kind of ways and stuff. And a lot of people didn't know. They thought that things were fine because there was a persona that we lived a good life and everything was fine and happy, because everything that happened was a big, kind of a big secret. So, and it's definitely something I still struggle with today. As we talked before, um, it's something that just doesn't disappear. I kind of recently had that back, and, I, even myself, it's how do you say it? Like I even myself, I'm on medication just to kind of help me get through that hump. And it's not a bad thing. It's just sometimes we have seasons and sometimes we need a little help to get us through those hard times and stuff. And it's nothing long term, but I think that's the problem too, is like people think that meds are such a bad thing, but if you use them appropriately and in the right way, they can always kind of help you get the foot in the right direction kind of thing.
Yeah, when you were like kind of going back to some of those childhood experiences, like even going into your teen years or when you were graduating high school or even those early years, did any of those emotions like come back up, or was it something that, just it never really hit you in any of those moments?
I would say when it first kind of hit me was probably when I was like the teenage years, mainly college as well. It was when we were in different places, or like when we went to like my uncle's house, it was always more comforting, and every time we left it was just kind of like, oh crap, like we're going back home. There's no kind of like protection. Not saying they knew what was going on, but like, only so much can happen in other people's places. And even in college, being away and being on my own, I always hated going back for the holidays or summer because it was just back to the environment where I couldn't be myself. And, I would still get in trouble. There was no, spanking, physical abuse, but there was still the mental, emotional abuse and stuff. And so it just, hit me the most, I think, once I had a kid that's when I got the full picture of my childhood.
Yeah. And so when you had, your first born, which was boy or
A
girl?
boy. Boy.
Boy. So you had your son. Um, were some of those was some of that trauma coming back while you were pregnant, or was it like all at once kind of after he was born and you started dealing with some of those things coming back up and into your mind or with your emotions?
It actually didn't happen until after a few months after I had him, and it was kind of, I would say, a array of things. There was an incident with my sister's daughters, and then it was just already having postpartum, and then it was just I started having, I would say, dreams of where we would go places, and then I could never find a way for someone to save me. I was always getting stuck, like going back home. And I know it sounds so simple, but like it was just a reminder of like where we are always looking for an outlet, even though we didn't realize it as kids. Going somewhere was always just exciting because it was out of the house and it was kind of like a safe territory.
Yeah, no, that's a really symbolic dream. It sounds like from what you were experiencing growing up and then what you experienced in life with, you went away for college, you went away into the military, so you definitely could see the symbolism in experiencing that. Um, what do you think hit you the hardest uh when that started happening when a little bit after having your son? What do you think hit you the hardest in your life at that moment?
I think the biggest thing was how could someone be like that to their child?
Mm.
Um, and why didn't I receive the love that I should have received? Um, yeah, I mean, and it's just, and then moving forward, I just don't want my kids to ever feel like how I felt, in that moment. It was just, I just felt like I wasn't truly loved, and I think that, that hit hardest.
Yeah, that's like just hearing that question, why didn't I receive the love I should have received, thinking back to your childhood. Um, that's got to be a really tough question to kind of ask yourself as you get older and you have a kid and you feel that love towards them. Um, just thinking about that question, um, did you did you start to try to justify anything of when you were younger? Did you try to like, oh, maybe it was that way because of this, or did you blame it on yourself, or were you trying to find peace with that question?
In the beginning, I definitely tried to find an answer. One that kind of made the most sense. I still don't want to make an excuse for why it was the way it was, but because my parents were young and having children, they never got to experience life on their own and being adults because they had their first kid at 16 and 17. So they never got to really be an adult. Them growing and being adult was having kids already. So they never got to mature in that realm of life. And so that's kind of the most, something that would be a good excuse for that. But as time has gone on, it's just I've come to terms with that's how it was. And I guess my purpose is, I must have had to struggle or go through what I went through to be the best mom to my children and to break the cycle moving forward. And that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah, and I think, understandably, that's whenever we ask those questions, of our past, we try to find a way to justify or answer or deal with whatever it was that we were questioning. So I think that's really understandable that that's something you would search for and look for. So kind of going back to that moment of, when it first started to creep in and seek in for you, did you start to feel differences in your behaviors, your mindset? Like, what was that process like when some of those things started maybe controlling or taking over and taking you maybe in a way you didn't feel like you should be going in that moment?
Uh, those moments were rough. That's kind of when I started to, let's see, definitely get depressed, anxiety, things I've never really experienced. I say I probably had experienced my whole anxiety my whole life, right? But you never realize that as a kid. So I would say I was probably not fun to be around. Probably ask my husband. It's just I didn't know how to help myself. There was moments that that I would have to take a drive where we were on a bridge at one point at through the drive home and stuff, and there was a few days that it was just like it would just be easier just to drive off, but then I quickly tried to remind myself, like, I have a kid, I have a husband, like, come on, but when you're so in those moments that you just don't have answers, you just don't know how to help yourself. Um, so it definitely was difficult, and I didn't know how to handle all of those emotions, and yeah, it's hard to explain. I'm sure you can relate, but it's just like just the feel of like you're not good enough, why am I here? What am I, what's my purpose and stuff. And even with a husband and only one kid at the time, like it's hard to like really find an answer and to like give yourself comfort because you're stuck in your own thoughts and when you're depressed and stuff, it's hard to find yourself out of it. And so I mean, I remember one day, it was one evening, I just went in and cried to my husband. I was like, I need help. And I'm surprised I did. It was my moment of weakness and the best thing I ever did, to help me move
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah, I think those moments where we start to question, what our purpose is, or like we even tell ourselves like, look, our life is good right now, or there's things that should make us happy, or things that shouldn't. Why am I feeling depressed? Why am I anxious when I have these good things in my life? That can be really tough because then it's like, well, people tell me I should be happy or I should be happy, um, but deep down I can't convince myself that I am happy or that I even deserve to be happy. Um, so I can really relate to having those feelings of just why I keep going, right? Even with some different things in my life, why I keep going and trying to find that reason, that cause. But luckily it kept you going, at least, whether you were dragging yourself or pulling yourself along, at least it kept you going, having, those things in front of you, your son and your husband. Um, and so that's a really positive moment in a moment of darkness. What was like, how long did you say you went through that with those thoughts with yourself before you had that moment of going to your husband and opening up to him? How long were you trying to keep those to yourself or to change them on your own?
Hmm. I would say there's definitely a good couple months. I would say probably 4 or 5 months. Um, that I just, growing up we just always keep our thoughts to ourselves, and how we felt. So, yeah, I think I did it for a few months, but I think it just got to a point where like I could tell it was affecting, you know, not just myself. Like I know I put the face on at work and stuff, but you can only do that for so long, I feel like. So, I would say probably around that time frame.
Yeah, that's a long time. A day is a long time to keep those thoughts to yourself and those emotions to yourself. So when you're feeling like that, it's even harder. Was there a moment that kind of pushed you to finally like say those words out loud to him, or was it just all that time building up and building up?
I think it was a buildup, and I know that, even though he's an amazing person, I think we probably had some rough, I wouldn't say anything crazy arguments, but definitely some bickering, things like that. And I think it was just I hated, like you said, it was just all bottled up, and I was ready to just, I think, explode. And so, as I said, I went crying. It was just like I can't help myself anymore. I can't keep this to myself. And it was just like I need help. And um yeah, I mean, I remember the exact moments. Crazy. It's just laying in bed, and it was an evening, and I just went up to him and just told him, and he hugged me and said, "We'll figure it out." So yeah, that's kind of how that went. And so I knew before he was my person, but then it was just like, for me to open up when I really couldn't my whole life, like that was a big deal. And it was, it's your most vulnerable moment. And so, um, yeah, so I'm grateful for that. And, he still by my side today, helping me through this battle, because as we've talked before, it's just, you have amazing days. And yes, I have a husband and 2 kids, and life's great, but you also have really bad days and setbacks. And so still trying to figure out how to make it through those.
Yeah. And kind of going back to that moment where you went to him, what was that like to finally say it out loud? Like for you, that experience, and I thought that was really cool that you worded it like right then you knew even more that, your relationship him was even more special. But what was that moment like for you to kind of just finally say like, I'm struggling and I'm I need help. I need that support.
I mean, it was just relieving. It felt like a weight off my chest just to get it out there, and just to let someone know what's really going on. I mean, it's weird, even though I'm in a time of just misery. I would say it was just like I felt relieved, because I just felt like content and that things would get better.
It's, that's such a good testament to what that moment means when we finally do it, right? When we finally
Yeah.
get ourselves to him, that when we finally reach out to support, that's a really good testament to it's hard. It's really hard to say that sometimes, and it could be scary in that moment and um really painful, but there's almost like this sense of relief and hope that you finally said it and you can kind of start working towards that. What
Yeah.
was like early on with that, you know, what did you do right away? Like after that moment, what was a couple of those first steps you took to kind of start working on it? or trying to work on it?
I honestly, so being in the military, things are a little, touchy and stuff, but I did call this one kind of agency, and I honestly started seeing a therapist weekly, and just trying to understand my thoughts. And it was, probably one of the best things I've done. And I've been, I would say, in and out of different, therapies, I would say, over the past couple years. But I think that once I started that, I mean, as you know, like it wasn't easy, right? I mean, it's figuring things out, a lot of crying, a lot of understanding. Um, but it was definitely just, I mean, that was the first step I took, and that's pretty much what I would say helped me. But then trying to also understand and be more aware of my feelings and what can make them better myself, because only we know how to help ourselves, right? And so I would say therapy and just kind of, trying to learn the emotions I have, but then also letting me have my emotions because I've bottled them up my whole life. So if I'm having a bad day, I wouldn't say sit and sulk, right? But, understand what your feelings are, take a few minutes and kind of let those emotions go and then, start your day. It's just, you can't keep bottling things up or it's just only going to get worse.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think therapy counseling is really powerful. Just being able to like, you don't even necessarily get answers to solve your problems, but you have somebody help you talk through them, right? You have somebody that can kind of like guide you through that conversation with yourself and with your own thoughts and your own feelings, and maybe figure out that you weren't really angry over something that happened that day, but you were angry because something was in your mind from 10, 15 years ago, or something,
Yeah.
it was a certain date or a certain action that just kind of put that back in your head. um so I think that can be a really powerful route for people, and I'm glad that that was something you were able to utilize. And just being in the military and having to admit like that you were struggling and everything, was there any fear to admitting with the position you were in?
Oh, 100%. Because, being in the medical field, I've seen where they say it's a stigma, right? Mental health is. And so they have made it a lot better. I will give them that. But, it was, if I do this, like I might not be able to move or I might not be able to do the dream job I'm trying to do in the military. So there was the fear of that. But luckily, the first kind of route that I went was through what's called Military One Source. So, they talk to you and nothing's documented. So you still have that session, but you're kind of protected in a way, and kind of once I went through the years and stuff, I definitely did see actually mental health in the military, and it, it didn't it didn't cause any effects, but like I said, they've changed a lot too, so that's good. It's good to understand that people have moments, people have setbacks, and so I'm glad that things have gotten better. But there still is always the fear. I think even military or not, you're being vulnerable, and you're supposed to be, this professional and stuff. And so saying that, I'm struggling, it's hard. So it definitely was a big fear of mine, but I'm glad that I've done what I've done. So I wouldn't change it.
Yeah, and just I think that's a really good point, and you said military, not military, it definitely can be, it can be a hard thing to be vulnerable and to just admit that you're struggling, and you need that extra support, for fear of, anybody can be going through that fear of losing their job, or fear of like having to take a step back from maybe, responsibilities that they have, or to try something new. That can always be a really fearful thing. And I think that's a really powerful part of, what you're talking about is, even with a husband, a kid, being, active in the military, you were still able to kind of get past that fear to say, all right, whatever I'm doing right now isn't working. I need to find those different avenues of support. And I think that's a really, powerful part of it. what's the age difference between your two kids?
Um, 3.5 years.
3.5 years. So as as the second one started to come along, was there any um like was it harder to get through? Were you a little more prepared for some of the emotions that may come with that? Were you able to identify them and have better routines or ways to deal with them, or was it kind of like, oh, this is hitting me again?
So I definitely was more prepared for child number two. I actually started therapy, kind of restarted it when I was pregnant because of the fear of just going back down through that route. And so I actually was doing therapy through pregnancy, after pregnancy, until pretty much until we moved back to New Jersey. So probably um, I would say a good 5 6 months after she was born, was doing therapy, and I think that was huge. I mean, I definitely hit other obstacles along the way, but I think if I wasn't in therapy, I probably would have went back down as deep as I was once I had, Max and stuff. And so I think that being aware and being kind of a fear of going back to square one, I think that, I set myself up, better the second time around.
Yeah, with was there anything else besides therapy that you started to put in place to make sure that that didn't start um happening again, or at any point in their life? Is there anything else that you kind of set up in order to lean on or like go to if things started, to get really bad again?
Um, I just know too, like I said, with the first one, there was kind of a lot going on. And so I would say even just, having a second baby, I've learned, I wanted to do everything myself with my first. I was afraid to ask for help. Um, and so the second time around, yes, it's always hard to ask for help, right? But I did, and I was more vocal about my emotions, what I need help with, just, and I think that was a huge help. And just having that communication, you don't realize, how much that help is, and you're not bothering. That's what the spouse is for, the other person. And then, kind of during that time too, I figured out, kind of, not getting too into it, but the missing piece of why, I was still having kind of like issues with, I guess childhood issues, dreams and things. So it kind of took care of that too. And so it kind of gave me even more peace moving forward once I had my daughter. And so, just having communication with my husband and therapy was just huge. Still not easy, right? But I was just so much more aware, and I think it just made a huge difference with with that. And I think, um, I mean, I wish not even just with my past, right? But as a mom or becoming a mom, I wish that they made it more known that, postpartum is okay to feel your feelings and to have bad moments, that it's normal. It's just finding the way to help yourself and to move on.
I think that would be a really tough thing, because I've heard that before about making, more awareness around postpartum, because you've just had a child, and it's supposed to be this wonderful wonderful experience, and then you're having those conflicting thoughts and emotions, and that internal struggle. I couldn't understand that aspect of it. Obviously not giving birth, but I saw a little bit of it in my wife, and then you sharing some of that. I can see, I've heard a lot of some overlapping things that I've heard her say and that you're saying now. um and that's just a really, I'm really glad that you're talking about it and you're sharing that, because I think that's something that um it is okay to feel those things, even if something's happening, you know, that's would you say that's a normal part of that, you know, postpartum feeling?
I think so. I know that there's people that don't hit it, but I feel like more than none, there's, they even call it like, the baby blues. It's not as deep as depression, but I think we all hit kind of a moment where it's like, you realize, you yourself, you're never going to be kind of like your old self. Your body's never going to be the same. And just once you have that kid, it's just like your mindset changes too. Like you have this kid and it's okay to like have moments where you don't want to hold them and things like that. I think that's normal because, our bodies are unique, right? And hormones. And so I would say it's definitely normal and just wish there was more awareness of to feel your feelings and know that that's okay, and it's just only, as they call it, a season, and you can get over it, as I wouldn't say get over it, but you know what I'm trying to say, you can move forward and learn, learn how to make yourself better.
Yeah. Find ways to deal with it, right? Find ways to prevent it from getting, you know, as bad it was before, or find ways to continue to just, you know, taking those preventative measures and different coping mechanisms as we go through. Um, and you know, mixing that in, you know, with some of your childhood trauma and that relationship. I know kind of in the beginning you talked about how you don't really have a relationship with your parents anymore. Um, would you talk about a little bit about making that decision and kind of when that came, with having two kids of your own and just making, you know, I asked you about it because that's a really big decision to make, but sometimes we have to make really big decisions for ourselves in order to heal, in order to grow. So kind of what was that like for you?
So I would say I didn't cut them both out at the same time. With the first one, I cut my dad out first. And so, kind of having all of those feelings after having my first kid. And then there was actually a situation where my, my dad, kind of, I think there was an issue with him and my niece. And it just kind of like had me flash back to like when I was a kid and how got yelled at. And it was just like, sometimes when he would get so mad, it just seemed like he was hollow. Like when you look into his eyes, like it wasn't him. And so it was, as a kid, it was actually genuinely scary. I know it's hard to explain unless you're in that moment, but it just kind of was like, I don't want that for my kid. If he can do that to us, and then he's already doing things to like, his grandkids, like I don't want my kids to have see any ounce of how I was treated or have, I know I probably yell at my kids. I know I do, but not to that, extent. Not to where it's, you seem like a whole nother person. And so that's when I kind of like was okay, like I'm done with that. And actually right before my daughter was born, I was trying to figure out this missing piece because I was having those dreams still of where, I feel like I couldn't get out or find, you know, find someone to help me out in the situation. I was, stuck going back home with my, my parents kind of thing. And so I wrote a letter to my mom, um, because I felt like this was a way I could say how I felt genuinely without any pushback, any what ifs, because I'm emotional. So sometimes when everyone else is emotional, it can kind of sway how you feel, right? And so I wrote it and said, hey, I have a session that I'll be with my therapist. If you want to call me then, don't talk to me before, just talk to me then. And kind of said, why do you want to be in my life? Kind of, we got into to details and stuff. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to think on it. Here's my next appointment. Um, and I really thought long and hard about it. And it just felt like it was the right decision because my parents are still married. And so my mom and dad still live together. And so I just felt like it was best because even though, they're two different people, there's been times that covered things up or not said, or like, when we went through things as kids, it was just kind of like, I wouldn't say she turned an eye, but it was kind of like acted like it didn't happen. It might have been out of own fear. I don't know, right? It's not my place, but I just felt like that was still keeping something, a connection between me and my dad to me, right? Like there was just still like kind of toxic, vibes coming through and stuff. And so, right before Addie was born, I decided to also cut my mom out. And honestly, since I did that, I haven't had any more of those dreams. And so it kind of made me realize that, like, maybe that was the missing piece, and I'm not trying to say that, my mom's the missing piece to all of it, but, sometimes when you keep certain people in your life, they can, bring things in. And so I just, yeah, I know it was two separate time frames, but, and it wasn't easy, but, um, definitely, I don't know, I'm more at peace in my life. And I know that people might think that that's crazy because it's your parents, but, you know, I, I don't know. It's hard to explain, right? It's just something that I don't know if it'll be forever, but for right now it's what's best for me and my family. And I wish, honestly, too, looking back, I wish I would have wrote my dad a letter, but at this point I feel like it's too late, I've already cut the ties. It's been, I think, 3 years, a little longer. And so I think that's my only regret in all of that. But right now I'm at peace with it, and I'm still content with my decision, even though I have hard days where I'm like, I'm used to calling my mom every day, and now I lost that piece, and so it's a big deal. But then I have to remember why I did it, what I'm doing, and the boundaries that I set for my family.
Yeah, I think what you just explained and your experience with that is really empowering. I think that can be really empowering for people, that making those tough decisions can be really beneficial. You said that you stopped having those dreams and you felt at peace, right? And that's what we want in life. We want to be able to have peace in our life and happiness in our life, and sometimes, again, it's making that tough decision, or going through that, that really hard process of moving past things that we need to move past, whether that's people, places, or things. And so I think that's really empowering, of just kind of talking about that. And like you said, maybe it's not forever, but that's what you need to be healthy right now.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to be better and healthy, and find different ways to grow in that. So as I really appreciate you sharing that part of it. Um, and as kind of keep going now and growing, what is, finding that peace and going through that, and finding healthy ways to deal with that, what benefits has that brought you? Kind of having that moment where you finally face that struggle, or, with your husband, and crying to him, and then, making that decision that you kind of got to remove your parents right now. How has that, brought you hope, or, benefited you emotionally, and in your life today?
I would say, um, definitely helped me be more open about my thoughts and my feelings. I think since I, felt relief, when I said I needed help, it was just like, I can tell people how I feel, and it's okay, Um, and I would say it's not easy. I mean, I have setbacks all the time, right? But and also just my journey is my journey, and no one else can help me through it but myself. And so I think that's one of the hardest things, but that's something I have to remind myself, because I remember going through therapy sessions and being like, so what should I do? So what's going to make me better, but it's like they can only guide me, I know what's best for me. And even talking to my sisters, and the one that's closer to me in age, it was just like, well, what are you doing? And it's just, I think it's important to realize, like, yes, it's a lonely path, but realizing that, like, no one else can help you. I mean, they can support you, right? But like, you have to go through it yourself. You can't follow someone else's journey. And I think realizing that has been very helpful as well, to know that, like, it's okay to be alone. It's okay to do things this way. And you learn a lot about yourself. I mean, I know I'm far from perfect, but I'm trying to learn to still be okay with who I am, and I'm almost like refining myself. It's like I always had to be this person as a kid, and now that I'm an adult, feeling my feelings, like I'm learning who I am, and I'm, finding the things that I enjoy, even if it's through my kids, right? So I think that's empowering. So I would say definitely, I think communication is key, and I think that, that's I think that's a big one for me. It's just, now I know that I communicate, and that kind of makes things better. So I think that's definitely um a huge one for me now. I definitely probably talk more about my feelings than my husband would probably like to hear, but um I feel so much better, instead of bottling it in. So I think that that's probably one of the biggest things today that is beneficial for me.
Yeah, and just like you said, like it's not that we face that problem once and in our life is, sunshine and rainbows for the for the rest of it. It's that constant work that we have to do, we have to put in. Some days are worse than others, some days are a little bit more of a struggle, but as long as we're trying, as long as we can, try again tomorrow, as long as we can, try something new when we have to, as long as, like you said, you're talking about it. And that's one of the biggest things, I think, is when we, get those feelings out, because when we keep them in, we tend to, act think that we're alone, right? And that
Yeah.
we don't have that support, like you said, or that guidance. And so it makes those decisions harder to make, that will benefit us. Because they're scary, right? They're always scary.
Yeah.
Anything that is going to help us can be scary at times. Um, so yeah, I really appreciate you talking about that and your journey through that. That's, again, I think it's a really powerful example of, we don't always know what people are going through, of, having to make those tough decisions to move on. And then, some of those are feelings and emotions behind postpartum and becoming a mom. And, there was a lot there. And what I really like about it is, I had my own story, my own journey through, a lot with substance abuse and addiction. Um, but some of the things you said I could really relate to. It was like, I've had those same thoughts. I've had those same feelings. I've been through those same emotional or inner battles. And that's what I really like about this, is that we all struggle. We go
Yeah.
through things, and the more we feel to talk about them, the more we can be like, oh yeah, I've had those shitty moments too. And it makes it a little bit easier for people to say, oh yeah, I am struggling today. I'm not doing well today. I need to find a way through it. Um, so I think that's an awesome message that you shared, and journey that you brought to us today. Um, Anything that you would like to end with, leave with? Any last, thoughts or ideas you wanna share?
I would just say, um, don't be afraid to ask for help, and even if you don't have support, there's people around you. So, like us here, if anyone ever needs help, we're that open ear, and just keep fighting the fight, because there's people there that always love you. So,
Thank you. Again, it's good seeing you. I appreciate your time and jumping on today.
sounds good. Thank you for having me, and it was good seeing you again.
And so this has been Illuminate, Navigate, and Radiate, with another journey series with Casey Stanley. keep joining us, and we'll see you next time.